Good morning. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We are excited about what we have in store today. We've been in a series called Starting Over, and every week we've tackled another challenging topic, and today isn't really any different. So thank you for being here and being part of what is happening here with Connection Valley Church. And if it's your first time, we would love for you to, we put a link in the chat. We would love for you to give us just a little bit of information about yourself. That'll help us stay in touch with you and connected with you after today. I do want to mention we have car stickers. I don't know if any of you like to put stickers on your car to represent the things and places and people that you love, but we have car stickers for Connection Valley Church. And if you don't have one and you would like one, you can drop a note in the chat or you can send us an email. We would love to get one to you so that you can support and let people know about us. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was driving around town and I was like, oh, I see a Connection Valley car sticker. I was behind Danielle Bowman. So then I waved like a crazy person, and I don't know if she knew it was me, but it was me. So we definitely want you to have one of those so that you can see each other around town if you are interested in that. I also want to let you know that we started a parenting group. I said this, you heard that. We're going through a study on temperaments. We started that last Monday night. So if you were not able to be a part of that and you want to be a part of that, it is not too late. I think I just saw I saw a different Zoom link go up in the chat. We have a Zoom link for that meeting on Monday nights. It goes from 7 to 8:30. We would love to have you join us for that. If you're interested, we can get you all caught up and hooked up. So just let us know if you're interested in that. And because of the spike that we had in our area with the coronavirus cases, we just put all of our in-person gatherings on hold, but we didn't want to go forever without doing something for CV kids. And so today we are having a virtual treasure hunt at 5 p.m. on Zoom. I did see that link go in the chat. We would love to have your kindergarten through 5th grade kid join us on Zoom. We have a treasure hunt that they can do at home and race through their house and find things, and there are even prizes. So we would love to have them be a part of that if they would like to be today. They might need your help, so I wouldn't go too far, but we would love to have them be a part of that. And anytime we have somebody join us for the first time, we donate $10 to a local community partner charity, an organization in our area that is doing great things. And so our partner for this month is Cross Trail Outfitters of the Triad. And so if you're here for the first time, we will be giving a $10 donation in your honor today. So do be sure that you fill out that form in the chat so that we make sure that they get some financial support. And so thank you to everybody who gives to Connection Valley. You make that kind of generosity possible. And so we're just excited that you guys are part of what's happening today. And I think that that's all that I have. So I'm going to hand it over to Jim, and Jim is going to lead us in some singing this morning.
On this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Yeah, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does.
Thank you so much, Jim. One of the things I love about every Sunday and every year, every week, every minute is it's a new opportunity to do something brand new. And I like birthdays in particular because they're new every single year. And we celebrated Micah's 20th birthday this past Tuesday. He turned 20. I cannot believe I'm a parent of a 20-year-old. So the question I have for you, does that make me old? Oh, no, you didn't. All right. Some of you are not my friends anymore. So seriously, no, I don't mean that. But I will say this, he turned 20 and it made me think about his past birthdays. And I'm really kind of embarrassed to tell you that not all of them were great. And sometimes it was because of this guy. Like, for instance, we talk about his 16th birthday now every year because you know what? I was mean. We were going to the at the time the brand new restaurant, the Burger Batch, which was in Winston, and I don't even know if it's still open. Some of you may know if it's still open, but they had these colossal milkshakes. And so in the social media world, they were circulating all over the place. And so for a 16-year-old to see a milkshake that had cookies and candy spilling out of it, and it's huge, that's kind of enticing. I mean, it is like ice cream porn. And then I'm just saying, he wanted to go there so badly. So we're like, okay, yeah, we'll go to the Burger Batch. So it is January and we decide to go down to Winston and they're packed. And do you know how long the wait was? 45 minutes. And I'm thinking 45 minutes, I'm hungry, I'm tired. And so I was a jerk and I expressed my opinion and I left a memory, unfortunately. Now I get made fun of every year, but don't do that. Be willing to wait 45 minutes if it's important to the loved ones in your life. That's a lesson I learned, at least. So I'm thankful for a new opportunity to have a new birthday this past Tuesday to celebrate. It also made me think about a birthday that actually was a little more pleasant. When he was 4 years old, we did the Chuck E. Cheese thing, which I didn't like that either. But at least I didn't create a bad memory going to Chuck E. Cheese, at least not for him. For me, maybe not for him. But we would go to Chuck E. Cheese and he would see the mouse when he was little. He'd say, the mouth. And it was great. We had these memories, we talk about them. But one year we went, he was 4 and he got a basketball uniform, and Micah has always loved sports. Do you know what he did? He took off all his clothes except for his underwear and he put it on, and a little girl he invited to the party was sitting right there. He didn't care. And I was thinking, well, things have changed a little bit in the last 16 years, and that's a good thing. But seriously, every birthday is a new opportunity to do something new, different, better. And we've been in a series for the last 3 weeks, now the 4th week, called Starting Over. And we talked about this whole idea that every new year is a new opportunity for a new start. And I think that's good news. And over the last couple of weeks, we've tackled subjects, some I've never talked about before in a message type format. But we've talked about the spiritual health and starting new with our spiritual health. We've talked about mental health. And we've also, what did I talk about last week? I'm completely blanking right now. I'm gonna have to think about it for a second. Oh, physical health. Yeah, that's kind of important, right? Boy, I had a bald moment there. We'll call it a bald moment. But we've talked about these things that are very important and they're integrated into all of life, and we can't compartmentalize them because when we do, we actually move toward being unhealthy. And so we talked about this idea that growth is a process, not an event. And so consistent small steps over time in a positive direction ultimately yields a positive result. And so we've talked about the idea of taking some of these steps will help us to love better, to be better, and to do better. And we presented 3 questions every week to think about and taking next steps. What do I need to keep doing? What do I need to stop doing? And then what do I need to start doing? And so oftentimes we have to stop doing something in order to start doing something, which leads us to another fun topic to talk about today, and that's our financial health. And I bring this up because our finances affect every single day. I mean, think about it. Every single day we need money to live, and we think about it, and it's a common topic in our homes. So I think it's important for us to talk about it because we all can get better in that area and we need help. I've needed help and sometimes still do need help to make sure that I'm financially healthy. I have a financial planner I use, and I have other people in my life who have advised me, and I'm very thankful for that. And I want to say this: a lot of us can relate to the poet, the famous poet that a lot of you know, who is a lyrical genius. His name is Snoop Dogg, and you can relate to his line with my mind on my money and my money on my mind. Yeah, you can relate to that, right? Because every day we are working with money in some way, shape, or fashion. And for a lot of us, we're like thinking about how are we going to get out of the debt hole we just created at Christmas, or maybe over the course of the last couple years. Last week I threw out a stat, and I'm not a big stats guy, but I think sometimes they help us get an idea of reality. And so last week I talked about how 40% plus of all Americans are obese, and that's challenging, that's disturbing. But when it comes to financially, 80% of Americans are in debt. That's even worse. And so hopefully we can encourage you with some good news today to help you take some tangible steps out of the debt hole maybe that you have, because the average American has $7,000 worth of debt on a credit card, and it's really hard to get out of. And I just was thinking about this idea that it's much easier to fall into a hole. I don't know how many of you have ever fell into a hole literally before. I have. It's much easier to fall into a hole than to get out of a hole. Gravity takes over and you go down. And as you try to get out, gravity is still in effect. And the same thing is true when you accumulate debt. It's really easy to fall into, but it's hard to get out of. And so we want to give you some tangible ways that you can take steps to do that today. And I thought about this too when it comes to debt. Some of you are Stranger Things fans, and I know there's going to be another season, which I think is great because I like the show too. But I thought about Dart and how when Dustin had Dart and he looked like a cute little pollywog, it was okay. I mean, he wasn't really all that harmful. He was really kind of harmless. But as he fed Dart, Dart got bigger and he turned into a demodog. And then he got an appetite for bigger things. And it's kind of gross and I won't go into it. But he became destructive. And debt is oftentimes similar to Dart. Starts small, becomes big. And I thought about, well, how do we get in that situation? Because I've been in debt before in an unhealthy way, and I had to climb out of the hole, and I needed help to do that. But how do we get there? And I thought about kind of a fun way we can talk about this, if we can make this fun, which talking about debt isn't a whole lot of fun. But I thought about some movies I really like or TV shows that I've liked in the past. And there are characters from these movies or TV shows that have different approaches to life, that if we take that same approach with our finances, it's unhealthy. And so I want to see if you can guess, and some of these are pretty easy. Some of these I think you will know pretty quickly, but the first approach, these two guys like to say these two words. Actually, it ended up being three. Hakuna Matata. Do you know who I'm talking about? Of course you do. I mean, who hasn't seen Lion King? If you haven't, well, that's just un-American. But Hakuna Matata, Timon and Pumbaa. I mean, and who doesn't love Pumbaa? Pumbaa's hilarious. And they go along and they're singing Hakuna Matata. And in them watching the movie, it's like, boy, that sounds really good to have no worries, no responsibility, no cares. I'm thinking no shoes, no shirt, no problem, right? But that's not a good financial strategy, because eventually it catches up to you. Eventually you find yourself going, oh, didn't know how I got here. And a lot of times in life, people just kind of throw up their hands and go, Hakuna Matata. And the Timon and Pumbaa approach doesn't take us where we want to go. Then there's this approach, and Brooke is going to be horrified with what I'm about to do. So you may have to turn your volume down a little bit, but I'm going to sing. And this is kind of like a musical, but kind of not. But this person comes from a movie that she watched probably 2 billion times as a child and has it memorized. So she would do a way better job than me, but she doesn't want me to make her a spectacle. So I'm going to sing a line from one of her famous songs. I want a party with roomfuls of laughter, 10,000 tons of ice cream. And if I don't get the things I am after, I'm going to scream. Now, okay, thank you for anybody who gave me a hand. You are beyond generous. Um, does anybody know the character I'm talking about? It's Veruca Salt, of course. I mean, we knew that. I mean, Veruca Salt was a band like way back in the day, but Veruca Salt was a character from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they did the remake back in like 2004. And she had an insatiable appetite for more. She said, I want 16 times in her song, I Want It Now, before she got thrown into the trash chute, which is kind of creepy if you ask me. But a lot of times people have the I want it now. They see it, they want it. Veruca Salt saw it, she wanted it. She had an insatiable appetite for more and couldn't say no to her own desires. I had a request to sing the rest of that song. We can have a private chat later. My wife is saying no. I think she would actually hurt me later, so we won't do that. So the next one you've actually heard me reference before, and it's one of my all-time favorites. And you'll probably know pretty quickly who this is, but it's My Precious. Me wants it, me needs it. It's mine, it's all mine. And some of you are really scared by what I'm doing right now. But that is Gollum or Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. And I love that series. And I know some of you hate it. It's a love-hate relationship with a lot of people here. But Gollum had this, I want it for myself. Everything, especially the ring, that passes through my hands is for my consumption. And a lot of times people take that mentality. It's a very much a hoarder type mentality that gets them where they are in an unhealthy way. And then the last one is a very, very much a throwback. It's a TV show. Does anyone know this one? Hi ho, Silver. If you guess the Lone Ranger, you are right. And the Lone Ranger is a great character, but some of us take the Lone Ranger approach when it comes to our finances that I'm going to do this all by myself. I'm going to be a Lone Ranger. And asking for help is sometimes the very thing we need to do to get out of the hole, to have that hand up. And again, and what we're going to talk about today, if you need that hand up, we want to provide you people and resources to help you do that. So those are all the approaches when it comes to unhealthy approaches toward finances or debt or spending. There's just some of them, and you maybe relate to some of them, or maybe you know people who struggle with those approaches. But we want to help you take that next step. And so we're going to look at a parable today where Jesus is telling a story, and he's telling a story to his disciples. And he's telling this story to talk about what the kingdom of heaven is like. And some of you may know this parable. It's known as the parable of the talents. And so the version I'm going to be reading from talks about the talents being bags of gold. And when Jesus is telling this parable, he's kind of foreshadowing and paralleling this to when he died on the cross and was crucified, when he was resurrected and ascended into heaven and left the earth, promising to come back, and leaving and entrusting his disciples with taking the message of Jesus, of himself, that, hey, I came to seek and save that which was lost to the world. And so I'm going to pick it up in Matthew 25. If you want to pull out a Bible or look at it on your phone, Matthew 25 verses 14 through 30. And we're going to kind of talk through this pretty quickly. And so Jesus says this, again, it being the kingdom of heaven will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To each one, he gave 5 bags of gold, or I'm sorry, to one, he gave 5 bags of gold. Let me get this right. To another, 2 bags, and to another, 1 bag, each according to his ability. And then he went on his journey. And one of the first things I want to pull away from here, and there's a lot we could pull away from here, but I'm just going to highlight one, is that the wealth distributed was the master's. It belonged to him. And in the same way, everything belongs to Jesus. Jesus being God, he created it all. We were made by him, for him. You can see that in Colossians, the book of Colossians. But in Psalm 50:10, David pens these words from the Lord. For all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. And my financial planner spoke that verse over us years ago, and it has stuck with me that God owns it all. That if I go through a period of having less than I think I need, God owns it all. If I go through a period of abundance, God owns it all. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And so that's left an impression with me. Every time I drive by and I look at farms and we go on trips, like we recently went to Virginia and we saw cows and we saw animals. I think about that verse every single time. God owns it all. So I'm going to continue in verses 16 through 18. The man who received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. He dug a hole. All right. So we'll see how this works out for the 5 bagger, the 2 bagger, and the 1 bagger who dug a hole. Verses 19 through 33. After a long time, the master of these servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5 and said, Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I gained 5 more. His master replied, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. Then the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. It's a party. They took the little they were given. Actually, it was quite a bit, but they made more of it. And so he's saying, I can trust you with more because you were faithful in the little. And when you're faithful with a little, you can be trusted with a lot. And so that's what he's communicating there. And what it means to be faithful is to be trustworthy and reliable. And I think about me, and I know that I want to be trustworthy and reliable when I think about my relationship with Jesus, and I think about my relationship with people. And I think you do too. So what happened to the 1 bagger who dug a hole? Verses 24 and 25. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Now, how do you think that's going to go over when the 5 bagger and the 2 bagger came back with 5 more and 2 more, and the 1 bagger dug a hole? Probably not so good. You can actually see as you look at the verses 24 and 25, you can see he gave excuses, he blamed his master, and he had fear. And one of the things I've learned in life is that fear is a bad leader for whatever we're doing, whatever we're stepping toward. Fear is a bad leader. Now, being wise is a good leader. Fear of the Lord or fear of Jesus and just being reverent, that's a whole nother thing. But fear in general is a bad leader. And so he was motivated by fear. Fear with our finances is a bad leader. Fear with our possessions is a bad leader. We can go back and talk about mental health. Fear with our mental health and our physical health and our spiritual health. It's a bad leader. So we're going to see what happens in verses 26 and 27. His master replied, You wicked, lazy servant. 2 things in life I hope I'm never called legitimately are wicked and lazy. Wicked and lazy. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gathered where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. That you would have at least made something, even though it would be a little, at least I would get a few pennies. You guys know what it's like when you put your money in the bank. There's not much return there, right? But he's saying at least there would have been something to show for you having stewardship of my wealth. But the truth is, because he was fearful, because he made excuses, because he was in the business of blaming, that he made a choice to be led by that, not by trust in the master. And so the consequence was this. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Oof, that's not feel good, is it? That's hardcore right there. And I thought, what did the guy that dug a hole with his one talent, what did he lose? He lost his place with the master, and he lost the trust from the master. Things I don't ever want to lose from anyone in this life, because he wasn't faithful with a little. And the truth is, when you're faithful with a little, you can be trusted with a lot. And so I have 5 big takeaways I want to share with you, and how to move from being unhealthy to healthy. And the first one was, you are temporary stewards of everything you have. One day, the things that you currently possess are going to be in someone else's hands. Somebody else is going to have your wealth. But the truth is, it's not your wealth. God gave you the ability to have it and to make it. And when you realize you're made by him and for him, that's a healthy place to be in, because now the money no longer owns you, or the possessions no longer own you. You realize they're for him, and then you can use them in a way that brings glory to him. The second thing is, you have a choice on how you manage what's been entrusted to you. That's one of the great things, even about being American. You're not forced to do anything, really. I mean, we have to pay taxes, but you can even not choose not to pay those. Not a good move, but you have a choice on how you're going to manage what you have and what's been entrusted to you. The third thing is, your choices will have rewards or consequences. Every choice has a reward or a consequence. And sometimes we don't feel the reward immediately. And sometimes because we don't feel the reward immediately, then we take that as a reason not to do it or not to take that step. But we have to think big picture, because there's a life beyond this life where we will stand before the master and give an account. The fourth thing is, making excuses and blaming others in fear will lead to poor financial decisions. And then lastly, if you're faithful with what you have, you will be trusted with more. Is that always tangible? No, it's not. But I can tell you this, I've gotten way more blessings out of giving than I have out of receiving. I've been blessed in what I've received from people before, but I feel way more excited about when I'm able to give and bless someone else. So to be financially healthy, we need to see money the way Jesus sees money. And the fact is, he owns it all. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And years ago, I was presented with this idea that ran contrary to the way that I had lived when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I lived by the philosophy of, I'm going to live on what I have, and I'm going to spend it on me and what I want to spend it on. And I'm not really going to save anything unless I really want something, and forget about giving. I'm not giving anything unless I have to. When I was presented with a different philosophy, what I would call the Jesus philosophy of give first, save second, live third, it flipped the script on how I went about living my life. And so I began to say, okay, if it's harder to give, I need to do that first. If I know that I'm going to be tempted to live off everything I have, then I'm going to give first. And I'm going to give to the church I believe in, the church that I consider myself to be a part of first, then I'm going to save second, and I'm going to live third. I would really challenge you with that. If you're in the live, I'm going to live first, and then I'm going to save second, and then I'll give leftover. I would challenge you to flip the script and begin to see finances differently, because financial health begins with being faithful with what God has entrusted to you. And I want you to hear me say that again. Financial health begins with being faithful with what God has entrusted to you. And if you can be trusted with a lot, you can be trusted, or with a little, you can be trusted with a lot. Flip the script from live, save, give to give, save, live, and watch him bless your life like the 5-bagger and the 2-bagger being entrusted with more. Now, I thought it would be cool to have 2 financial professionals who love Jesus to be able to answer a couple questions practically to help us take next steps. So I've invited Tom Norris and Scott Reese to share a few answers over the next few minutes as we close our time to a couple questions to help us in our finances. So Scott and Tom, will you go ahead and unmute yourself and say hello?
Good morning, guys.
There's Scott. And
Howdy.
then where is Tom?
Right here.
Hey, I can see you. All right, guys, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we talked about this prior to today, so these guys are prepared. But what practices have you seen help people be financially healthy? Tom, you can go first.
Yeah, I would say spend less than you make typically is a good rule. We start our lives, and we made the commitment 20 some years ago when we got back into church kind of seriously to pray and to tithe. Tithe was the minimum, and it was the first thing we did. And we've had great success with that. Just number one, we're doing what the Lord asked us to do, so we feel like we're in right relationship with Him by doing it. And then praying where He wants us to send it. But really, the key, I think, in finances for everybody is you have to learn to spend less than what you make, or as Ramsey and so many others like to say, they call it telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went.
That is very well said. Scott, what would you say about that question?
Yeah, that's great, Tom. I echo what he says, and I would add what many of us would consider a four-letter word, which is putting together a budget. We oftentimes know what's coming in, but we have yeah, I know it's not really four letters, Brian, thanks. We all know what's coming in, but very few people actually know what's going out. And, the Bible says your heart is where your money goes. And that's very, very, very true, especially for men as providers of our families. And of course, the women who are also providers for their families. That money is very close to your heart. And so you need to know where it's going. And also, and this will help you know if you've got positive cash flow or if you've got negative cash flow. A lot of times we're spending way more money than what we have. I know when we first really did our budget together and we realized we were spending almost $2,000 a month on food between groceries and eating out, that was mind blowing. That was a realization I did not have until we actually put it down on paper. So a budget is really important. Number two, I'd say, is having an emergency fund. If you don't have an emergency fund, then where are you going for those emergency expenses? You're either having to borrow it or you're having to put it on a credit card, neither of which is a good move. So really trying hard to figure out that budget and put together a small emergency fund.
Yeah, that's great advice, guys. I've seen that to be important in our lives to really record every receipt and to see where it's going, and not just that Hakuna Matata approach of, oh, no worries, it'll work itself out. I think that's a terrible way to steward your finances, but we did that for a little while. And once we started looking at every single receipt, it's been amazing. So good advice. Second question I have, and Tom, you can go first again. If someone had substantial debt, what is the first step you would recommend them taking? So they're in that deep hole. What's that first step you would recommend them taking?
So I would probably say talk to a professional. They've seen everything really, and most of them have seen stuff. They've had clients break down, and there's a level of shame that goes with excessive debt. People feel like they've really failed. They can't believe how they got there. The emotions really well up, and that sense of shame and failure I've noticed over the years for the ones who have considerable debt. So what's nice is there are a lot of free counseling services out there, in addition to plenty of financial advisors who have seen it, that can just kind of walk them through the process. There are do-it-yourself programs out there like Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, and they work if you do them, but very few people are really self-starters. And so sometimes what you need is just somebody else who has really seen a lot tell you, you know what, yeah, it's bad for you, but it's not as bad as you think, and there's a way out. And what I think that gives is an opportunity for hope. And wherever hope lives, then you can take the next step.
Yeah, that's great, Tom. Yeah, number one, just like the song that we sang this morning, check your shame at the door, because shame about how you're spending money or embarrassment about the kind of debt you have, the enemy wants you to feel alone. He wants you to stay like you're the only one that's there. And that is, just like Tom said, that's not the case. Every day we sit down with people that are having the same struggle. And all they need is some guidance, a plan, a direction, and someone to help hold them accountable, to kind of see those goals taking place of eliminating debt. So, that's great. Write your debts down, just like a budget. If you don't know where your money's going, same thing with your debt. If you don't write your debt down, you don't really know what you have to look at. You have to have a starting point to figure out where the end point is. And Dave Ramsey has made this very popular of doing a debt snowball. And, both Tom and I would be more than happy, or free services or doing the Dave Ramsey plan, to help you write your debt down, put together a game plan so that you can take one step at a time to feel successful, because you just need that sense of success to realize that you can do it.
Gentlemen, that's so well said. And I've got a couple more questions I want to ask you, because you're sharing a lot of wisdom. I think that can be very helpful. What practices get people into trouble financially in your experience? Scott, why don't you go first this time?
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's sleeping before you think. You see the commercials at Christmas where you get a brand new car with a big fat bow on it, and you're thinking, oh, that's awesome, I want to do that. And then you're $50,000 in debt just simply because you went off in emotion instead of really thinking through the process. And the whole idea within America is, I have to have it now. We can have everything right now. We all have these little things right here in our hands where we can have anything. I mean, Amazon will deliver to you within 4 hours now or something like that. I mean, it's nuts. We're in a now society, and we really need to start practicing delayed gratification. And that's extremely hard, for us. But that's the biggest trouble I see people get into, is they leap before they think, and they don't understand the long-term consequences of the choices that they're making. And a lot of times it's almost too hard to start getting yourself out of those consequences once you're in it without some major repercussions.
Excellent. Tom, what would you say?
I would agree with most of what Scott said, actually. And I would say that what I see is people living above their means and not really taking seriously, or maybe prioritizing the concept of an emergency savings fund. It's hard when you're living paycheck to paycheck to think that you can get to an emergency savings, right? But $20, $25 a pay, just put it away someplace where you're not going to touch it, can turn into $1,000 relatively quickly. And what that does is, the next time an appliance breaks or the car has unexpected repairs, you're not putting it on a credit card or a home equity line or whatever. You have something set aside. And in order to get that money, sometimes you have to really differentiate between what's a want and what's a need. And that is really hard when you can buy with the click of a button and have it delivered directly to your home. And we all struggle with that. Everybody I know struggles with that. And so what I would say is just you write it down, right? You make a list and you write it down. What are my priorities going to be here? And then small victories. Celebrate, not financially necessarily buying a bottle of wine or champagne, but celebrate the small victories. Hey, I paid off a $250 credit card that I didn't think I was going to pay off. And then you can use strategies like the debt snowball to go on to the next day. But seeing those victories early is one thing. I try to tell my clients to keep, as soon as they can get there. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different level of what an emergency need would be, really. But I think we all could agree that if you have to go out and drop $500 or $1,000 on a dishwasher or a washer or dryer, or something on your car, tires these days all are expensive. And so if you can get to $1,000 typically, and you've had the discipline not to touch it, then you'll start to see gains. And so that's what I would say is, try not to live above your means. That keeps you from having one event put you in the hole, and learning the difference between a need and a want, and get that emergency savings in place as soon as possible.
That's excellent. Just for the sake of time, I want our small groups to be able to meet, and we have one more song we're going to do. Is there anything else you'd want to communicate based on the questions I sent to you that you think would be important for our church to know today? And Tom, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, what I would say is that typically financial health is really tied to your spiritual and your emotional health. And I think people, men probably more than women, but I've certainly had women where this applied. We don't realize that they're connected as much as they are. I mentioned earlier, you know, I've had people break down in my one-on-one sessions, generally women, but not always. And typically what you find is as you just ask normal kind of financial planning questions about where they are, it triggers something. And I think there's an impulse in us to try to compartmentalize our finances from everything else. And I think that's a mistake, because the Lord, you know, it's all entwined. And what we found, I think, from our personal experience was when we finally committed in our heart to tithe, our life started to change. It didn't change overnight, but little by little, opportunities came along. Sometimes checks in the mail came along. Those were rare and far between, but they were clearly divine. And so you just start to say, hey, there's something to this, and all of it's tied. So when you change your paradigm and you look at it, you say, yeah, I have this job and she has her job, and yeah, it's our money, right? No, it's really the Lord's money. It's what the Lord has given you. And if you're going to be a Christian who's serious about his or her walk, I think personally, that's a great place to start. It's an easy place to start. You know, I get paid, first check or first deduction out of my checkbook is tithe. And then typically we give above and beyond that throughout the year as we see needs, and we try to be sacrificial in it. But that's to me, that's the place to start, is just saying, Lord, you know, I've tried to make the best of this situation and I can't. Maybe I've failed. And so I'm turning it over to you, and I'm asking you to guide me. And he said, you know, bring the whole tithe into my storehouse and see if I don't throw open the gates of heaven, right? And give you more than you can store. And so I trust him in that. And sometimes it's lean and sometimes it's not, but I always know I can look back and see all the times where it looked like there was nothing coming. Because many of you know, as a financial advisor, I work a lot from managed money and commission. And so I never know what I'll make first, and you're taking care of your family. So I'm a rambler. I know we're short for time, so I'm going to shut up now.
Well, you got a lot of good things to say, so I appreciate you sharing that. Scott, why don't you wrap up this interview, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to build on what Tom said, you know, if you have a spouse or a significant other, you've got to get on the same page. All right, spend some time getting on the same page, understanding your finances together, because you can't do it separately. That was the biggest challenge. I'll be honest, that's one of the bigger challenges that Beck and I had. But once we started getting on the same page and we got in the same mindset of tithing, like Tom said, the windows of heaven opened up. You know, Malachi 3:10. This is the only time in the Bible that the Lord says, test me in this. Malachi 3:10, test me in this. Bring your whole tithe to the storehouse and see if I won't open up the windows of heaven. So I encourage you, test God on his word. And I promise you, he's going to back his word up. So getting on the same page, testing God and his promise of tithing. And the only other thing that I would say is 1 Timothy 6. This is probably one of the most misquoted verses in the entire Bible when it comes to finances. You know, people want to say, for money is the root of all evil. That is not the verse.
Money.
It's the love of money that is the root of all evil. And if you're giving and you're tithing and you're living out God's word and you're living with open hands, then you're not in love with money. Okay? You're being responsible according to your abilities with what you have. And God will get you more because you're proving that you can handle what he's given you. That's it.
Gentlemen, that's strong. And I appreciate you not just speaking to this, but actually doing what you're talking about. So it gives you credibility. And so I want to say thank you for that. And I think you're exactly right, Scott. Money is the love of money is the biggest competitor to our love for Jesus. So I just want to go back to where I was a little bit earlier, that financial health begins with being faithful with what God has entrusted to you. And I want to really challenge you, kind of based on what these two gentlemen said, to flip, live, save, give, to give, save, live, and watch God bless you in ways you've never experienced before, both tangibly and intangibly. So I'm going to pray for us, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim. I see Scott holding up a finger.
One thing.
Yes, sir.
I think Tom would agree with me on this. If any of you guys want some advice or guidance, reach out to Brian. He has my contact information and he has Tom's contact information. We're here to help. We love to give people and we love seeing people successful.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Scott, because we even talked about offering some kind of financial class via Zoom at this point in time. And so I know, Scott, you mentioned that you'd be willing to do that. And I haven't had that conversation with Tom yet, but that may be something we do. And Tom, thumbs up. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. We can make that happen, because we want to help you guys in that area of life, because it can be so destructive to our marriages and to our relationships when that debt hole gets to where it just eats us up and we can't get out. There is help available. So I want to pray for us, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim for one song. And in your small groups, which are, I think they're the most important thing we do. If you're here for the first time, we'll be assigning you to those. It's random. And we hope you stick around with us, because those discussions and those connections are rich. And a lot of times what you have to say helps someone else in a tremendous way. So I want to say thank you for being generous with your time as a facilitator and as a participant. I'm going to pray for us. I'm going to give it to Jim, and then Brooke's going to send us to groups. God, thank you for loving us right where we are and for never letting go. God, I pray for those who maybe don't have a relationship with you today, that they would see how much you love them, and they would see their need for you, understanding that, God, you made all this, that nothing is an accident, that's in your creation. And so I pray you would help us to recognize your creation, and that we're part of your creation, and that we would be faithful to be faithful to the things that you've given us, to be faithful in the little things, so that we could be trusted with more. And I thank you for Scott. I thank you for Tom and what they shared today. And I pray for people to take their next step toward being free financially. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
When all I see is the bad, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain. And as I walk through the shadow
Thank you so much, Jim. I love that new song. So, as Brian mentioned, small groups is one of the best times of the morning, and I'm sure that those leading the groups will give you a quick break to run to the bathroom or grab more coffee or whatever, and we'll spend about 30 minutes just kind of talking about what we talked about this morning. So we invite you to be a part of that. Just click the join button as soon as you see that on the screen, and we'll see you next week.